Hey guys, this is Will from PowerTraders.com. Today I'll be doing a weekly analysis on the US indices. Of course, you guys can see here, I'm looking at the S&P 500. Just a quick recap. Of course, we've been trading this nice channel trend since our initial breakout in November of 2020. We've held this channel for a while now, almost a year. So let's see what happens in these coming months. Interesting. And let's take a look what's happening in the past few months here. And you can see here that since April, S&P has been has managed to trade at the top end of the channel for 2 months. Actually, no, just 1 month, until May, until we had the sell-off here. And technically, since May, we've been trading underneath this yellow resistance level. In other words, since May, the S&P has been trading in the bottom end of this channel ever since. We haven't moved back up here. We try attempt multiple times, one here, third attempt here, second attempt here, and of course we are could be potentially moving up to test it again. But anyways, if you guys saw my last week video, we've been trading in this narrow range at between 4,400 and 4,365. Interesting. Finally, we had a breakout on, let's see here. Let me jump in. Sorry, let me just zoom in so you guys can see this a little better as I analyze the charts. We finally had a breakout, although I would call this obviously a false breakout. But then we had another one on August 5th, came all the way up, came back down, first test. And here you can see we held it second time, held it third time. Finally went all the way back up. To set a new all-time high. Of course, we closed at a new all-time high at 4,431 on August 6th. Let me see, that's actually August. Yep, August 6th. And then we had a sell-off, held it, came back up again, held it, test. And of course, we had another test here. And now look like we could be potentially resuming off to the upside again. If you look, see here on the 15-hour, it does look like we could be forming a triangle structure potentially. Not really the best of charts, not really that obvious, but it could be playing out. Let's see here, it could be playing because we are actually holding this now support, but once resistance, right? So we're now holding this, and we could potentially see a move, a breakout. Definitely very interesting, and definitely want to keep your eyes on the S&P in the coming days for sure. Actually, let me show you guys one more thing before I do jump into the VIX average true range. Average true range is an indicator that tells you, well, basically it's a one of many volatility indicators. It means that the ranges of the price is narrowing down. When it falls down, it means the range of that price is falling. And you can see here, we haven't been this low since early July. So we haven't had such a narrow range since we were trading here. And of course, we were trading really narrow here until eventually we had a spike in volatility, and we saw this drop here. So, and obviously that's going to play out again. Markets never trade sideways and low volatility forever. With it, goes through wave period. Markets, I like to describe, are like wave. It goes through periods of quietness, then periods of volatility, and then back to quietness, and then volatility. That's just how the market operates. And that's generally due to news. Usually news, create those wave, create those volatility. Anyways, let's take a look at the VIX. VIX, of course, hasn't really done that much. We obviously had many closed candles. We had a spike back here in July 16, but since then we haven't moved much. But nonetheless, for S&P to move higher, say to 4,040 or 4,050, the VIX is going to have to come back down. For those of you guys who are not familiar with the VIX is generally skewed to the upside when things are bearish. When prices are falling to the downside and falling sharply, that causes skew to the VIX is to spike to the upside. And when the VIX falls, it means that price is generally skewed to the gains. And that's not always true, but that's why I use the word skewed. Sometimes the VIX could be down, but actually the S&P is actually down on that day despite the VIX being down, and vice versa. The VIX may spike, but actually the S&P is actually in the green that day. Okay, let's jump ahead and take a look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ, very interesting also. Actually, initially not interesting, but when you look closely, price has been narrowing down, and that's the main reason why I think it's becoming a bit more interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, you can't be trading sideways and low volatility forever. It's just not how the market operates. Eventually, we're going to come back. Volatility and momentum will return, and as you guys can see here, just like the S&P, we haven't been this low since July. And in fact, if you go on the daily chart, we haven't been this low since 2020. So will we see a move soon? Potentially to the upside, to the downside. That's yet to be seen, but definitely also keep an eye on NASDAQ. I do want to point out the NASDAQ Volatility Index. If you guys look, you can see here we are testing key support right now. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, if the NASDAQ does drop sharply, that's generally skewed to the downside. So if we do drop, say, below 1555, could that mean we'll see a move, a breakout? Or not necessarily a breakout, a break above this. Sorry, let me clarify. Breakout above this red line here, and potentially to test this final key resistance level of the trend. Potentially, obviously, again, just because, as I mentioned earlier, just because the Nasdaq's falling down, doesn't mean price is going back up. So I would disencourage you guys to place a trade just because the volatility is falling on the NASDAQ. But nevertheless, interesting stuff's happening. Let's see what happens, especially keep you guys' eyes on the volatility of the NASDAQ. Let's see if we actually break below 1555. Before I jump in and take a look at other indexes, let's take a look at this is an ETF for small cap tech, another important one. And of course, you can see here we are testing the top part of the channel. And it looks like maybe we'll see a breakout soon. If it does hold, let's see if it holds this level here. Let's see what happens. If we do come back down and hold it, when we see price come back down, test, resume off, that could be a really interesting setup. And of course, because this is technically a tech ETF, although it's a small cap, it is a tech ETF. So a breakout on this could be encouraging for the NASDAQ. Let's look at the Dow Jones. Let's see here. Dow Jones hasn't looked that interesting. Last week I did say it looked really interesting because I was like, this pattern here could be forming. Looks like a flag pattern could be forming. We've been consolidating a while. Kind of the bulls are knocking on the door. We want to set new all-time high. They just keep knocking, and eventually, guys, did have a breakout here. We on August 6th we closed a new all-time high, but since then we've been trading downwards. Seems like a slight pullback, but again, if you look at the 15-hour, it does look somewhat interesting, guys. This, to me, it looks like a bull flag could be forming. Of course, I want to see price break these level here, but this is not a coincidence. When this bull flag coincides with this red resistance level here at 35,000. So that's a key level. Definitely gonna have to keep an eye on that. If we do break that level, let's see if we resume off to the upside, set new all-time highs. Definitely an interesting trade. Also, keep you guys on this level at 35,000. Now let's take a look at the hype stocks really quickly. Of course, if you guys watched my last video, my two favorite hype ETFs or hype stocks. The way I track hype stocks are two ETFs. XITK and ARKK. So let's start off XRKK. With XRKK doesn't look that interesting, guys. Just like my last video, guys, we have to get above 130 for us to look, bullish. Potentially, for any move higher, we have to break 130. And that's the same story goes with the XITK. You can see here the correlation with the ARK. there's definitely clear correlation. But just like the ARC, we have to see price break 230, at least in this case. Although I do like to point out something, Tesla, which I think is like 15% of the ARC fund. I could be wrong, maybe less, maybe like 10, 11%. But unlike the ARC, the breakout on Tesla looks actually much cleaner. We see here that we had a breakout, retest, resume off, and then we came back. We had another breakout of 700, which we've been struggling to move above that, but then we finally break out, and then we had a retest on Friday, and now we're up again. So potentially this is also definitely an interesting trade for those of you guys looking at some short-term trades. Of course, depends on your time horizon, depends on your strategy, but in my case it does look pretty attractive. We may see a move all the way up, take us higher, maybe 750. Definitely keep an eye on this, on Tesla. And before I end the video, let's just go through some of the earnings stuff or other news, current events that may have, impact the stock market in this week. So nothing too interesting this week. Pretty quiet week for the earnings. We do have Disney, Baidu. Well, that's Chinese. NetEase is also Chinese. We do have eBay, but nothing too interesting. We do have Nordstrom. Maybe that could be something interesting for the market. Kind of take kind of good lens into how the retail market is doing. But nonetheless, pretty quiet week for the earnings. Let's look at the Forex calendar information. You guys can see here, Monday we had a really strong job opening report. We see here beating forecasts. That's great news, guys. As you guys know, labor market is doing really well. A lot of people hiring. Wages are going up, so that's great news. And of course, as you guys know, on Friday we also had a really strong job report. So that's great news. Double good news on the job, on the job and the labor market, which is awesome. Let's see what else is happening. CPI, yes, another really important one. Definitely keep an eye on this for those of you guys who, for gold, another one. Actually, I'll go in depth in that in another video. We did have a pretty big sell-off on gold, so this is going to be pretty interesting to see how gold's going to react to the CPI. We do have crude oil inventories, a lot of crude stuff coming out this week. And initial jobs claim on Thursday, definitely very important. And of course, we have the PPI. Apart from that, nothing too much, but definitely keep you guys, definitely some important data coming out. Especially the initial jobless claims, guys, coming out on Thursday. Definitely very interesting. And obviously, most importantly, definitely keep you guys out on the CPI monthly, month of July, which is coming out on Wednesday. Anyway, guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.